Hello everyone and welcome wherever you're viewing to this session in the Edgware United Synagogue adult education program entitled A Seder Fit for a King. Today, Tuesday the 23rd of March, has been designated a National Day of Reflection to mark the anniversary of the first coronavirus lockdown in the UK. It has included a minute's silence at midday, followed by a bell toll. People have been encouraged to stand on their doorsteps at 8 p.m. just 5 minutes ago with phones, candles and torches to signify a beacon of remembrance. Alongside our neighbours, we commemorate those who have died from the virus, contemplate the challenges of the past 12 months and unite in hope for a brighter future. Prominent buildings are lit up across the UK and there are various remembrance activities run locally. The Prime Minister said, "My thoughts are with all those who have lost loved ones and who have not been able to pay tribute to them in the way they would have wanted. Today we acknowledge how in adversity we saw strength as we have all come together to help each other, family, friends, neighbours and communities." In 4 nights' time, we have another form of remembrance that we celebrate annually, the liberation of our people from slavery in Egypt, the Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Exodus. Then, as now, plagues were in the narrative, and then as now, the bondage was ended and we became a free people. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and even if for a second year in a row we are prevented from celebrating the Sedorim with our families and friends, the nightmare of the past year will soon be behind us and we'll be free to live our lives once again in freedom from government restrictions. Me'avdus l'cheirus, miyogan l'simcha, u'me'eva l'yom tov, u'me'afela l'or gadol, from bondage to freedom, from grief to joy, from mourning to holiday, and from darkness to great light. That we'll read in the Haggadah shortly has a particular resonance this year. But even if we are currently constrained, we can make our Sedorim joyous occasions through music and song. Rabbi Geoffrey Shisler is going to conduct us through some of the finest and memorable Seder pieces for you to enjoy and maybe enhance your Seder in a few days' time. We are indebted to him for the carefully prepared cantorial sessions he's put on for us at Edgware United in the past and for his dedication to keep cantorial music and traditional Nusach alive.
Good evening, everybody. Delighted to welcome you here this evening to share with me a Seder fit for a king. We've got a lot to get through, so I'm not going to waste much time. But I do want to tell you that it's not all chazanut, not by any manner or means. You're going to hear some beautiful melodies, some you know, some I hope you don't know, things that I hope you will find appealing. All I can say is that I love all of them. The Seder starts, as you know, with Kadech Urchatz, with the recital of the stages through which we're going to travel, from Kiddush up to Nirtzah. The order that we follow is said to have been instituted by Rashi, and its 15 steps can be seen as indicative of the 15 steps leading up to the temple. They also bring to mind the fact that the moon becomes full on the 15th of each month, and like the Jewish people, even though it then starts to wane the following month, it inevitably starts to wax again.
Ma
on every Shabbat and Yom Tov, we begin our meal with Kiddush, which is, of course, the first of the 4 cups of wine that we're obligated to sing at the Seder. The Kiddush we're going to hear is performed by Jan Pierce, together with an orchestra and a choir. I doubt whether you'll have that at your Seder. We certainly won't have that at ours, and certainly not this year. Jan Pierce was born in 1904. His name when he was born was Jacob Pincus Perlmuth. And as a youngster, he trained as a violinist. In the early part of his career, he played and sang in a dance band. As a youngster, Pierce used to play the violin. In order to pad out his act, he started to sing popular songs. It was almost by accident it was found that he had an unusually good voice. He was engaged to sing with the Radio City Music Hall Company, and since they frequently appeared on the radio, he soon became a well-known performer of light classical songs and operatic arias. The famous conductor Arturo Toscanini heard him and decided to engage him to sing the lead in his recordings of opera and various choral pieces. Jan Pierce made his formal debut in Philadelphia in 1938, and then he appeared with the Metropolitan Opera Company in New York in 1941. He was widely regarded as a very fine operatic performer, but he was certainly not snobbish when it came to music. In 1971, he made his Broadway debut as Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof. Although he made countless appearances as guest chazan in various synagogues, he never held a regular post, and he died in 1984.
יום חג המצות הזה, זמן זמן חרוסיינו, זמן זמן חרוסיינו,
We now move on to Halach Ma'anya. Now, the three verses that make up this paragraph don't actually have much to do with one another. Start off with saying this is the bread of affliction, which our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. And then we say, anybody who's hungry, come and eat with us. And we finish off today with slaves, next year maybe be in Yerushalayim. There's a view that they used to eat the entire meal before relating the story. So they'd start with, this is the matzah, then they'd open the door to ask anyone in, and then they'd say, next year Yerushalayim at the end of the meal. Sounds like a pretty good idea to me, and maybe we should reinstitute it. Not much chance, I'm afraid. But this paragraph is a remnant of the original practice. We're going to hear a popular Israeli performer, Gadi Alon, singing Halach Ma'anya.
אכלו אבתנה בארעה דמצרים, בארעה דמצרים, כל דכפין יתה ויכול, כל דצריך יתה ויפסח, השתה האחה לשנה הבאה בארעה דישראל, השתה עבדי לשנה הבאה בנכורים.
Now, the original intention was that children sitting at the Seder table would see strange things happening and ask their own questions. By Mishnaic times, around about the year 200, questions became formalized into a specific set that was and is now still used by everyone. Originally, one of those questions was, why is it that on all other nights we can eat meat that has been roasted or boiled, but tonight we can only eat roast meat? Well, this was asked when the children saw that they were only allowed the Paschal lamb to eat at the Seder. When the temple was destroyed, it was no longer possible to bring the Paschal lamb. This question was changed to one asking about why do we lean at the Seder? The version we all know was composed in 1936 by Ephraim Abileah. It was part of an oratory he'd written called Chag HaCheirut, the Festival of Freedom. Now it's so prevalent, it's really considered like a folk song. We're going to hear an older version.
Halaylo hazeh kulo matzo. Farvos is die Nacht von Pesach, anders von alle Nacht von a ganz Jahr. Alle Nacht von a ganz Jahr. Es sind mir Chametz und Matzo, aber die Nacht von Pesach, es sind mir nur Matzo.
Man ich kann noch, Alaylo Hazel. Man ich kann noch, Alaylo Hazel.
Shebechol Alaylo Sanu Achlin, She'ar Yirakos, Alaylo Hazel, Moror. Alle Nacht von a ganz Jahr, es sind mir allerlei Kretiger, aber die Nacht von Pesach, es sind mir nur bittere Kretiger.
Man ich kann noch, Alaylo Hazel. Man ich kann noch, Alaylo Hazel.
Shebechol Halelos Einon Umatfilin, Afilu Pamechos, Halaylo Hazeh, Stefamim. Alle Nacht von a ganz Jahr, denken mir nicht ein Afilu einmal, aber die Nacht von Pesach, denken mir ein zweimal. einmal in Karpas und Salzwasser und einmal in Marmor und Charoises. Shebechol halelos anu achlin, ben yoshvin uvein misubin, halaylo hazeh kulanu misubin.
Now, what we say in Avodah Mayinu clearly doesn't provide answers to the child's questions. Avodah Mayinu merely sets the backdrop to the story of the Exodus that's about to be retold, and the children's questions should be answered at appropriate points in the Seder. Here we're going to hear Sidor Belarsky. Now, Sidor Belarsky was born Isidor Lifshitz in 1898 in the Ukraine in Russia. He graduated from the State Conservatory at Leningrad and was the leading bass of the Leningrad State Opera Company. He went to America in February 1930 with his wife and daughter. From 1932 to 1936, he lived in Los Angeles, where he embarked on a singing career with the Los Angeles Symphony. He devoted much of his time to teaching music at the Jewish Teachers Seminary, New York City. He gave concerts throughout Europe and the Middle East, Canada, South Africa, and South America. And he visited and sang in Israel in 1948 to celebrate its birth. He was known as a collector, disseminator, and interpreter of classical cantorial music, Hasidic nigunim, Yiddish folk songs, and Hebrew songs from Israel. He died in 1975 in New York City.
עבדים היינו לפרעה במצרים, ויוציאנו השם אלוקינו משם ביד חזקו ובזרוע נטויה, ויהי לו יוציא הקדוש ברוך הוא עשו עשינו ממצרים, נרינו בנינו משובדים היינו לפרעה במצרים, ואפילו כולנו חכמים, כולנו נבונים, כולנו זקנים, כולנו יודעים את התורה. מצווה עלינו, מצווה עלינו, מצווה עלינו, מצווה עלינו, לספר ביציאת מצרים. וכל המרבה לספר ביציאת מצרים, נראה זה.
Hisha Amda tells us, and it is this that has preserved us throughout history. But it doesn't say what this is. There are many explanations, including the lovely idea based on the word itself, Vahi, which is spelled Vav, Hey, Yud, Aleph. Numerical value of the Vav is 6, reminding us of the 6 orders of the Mishnah. The numerical value of Hey is 5, which of course are the 5 books of the Chumash. Yud is 10, the 10 Commandments, and Aleph is one God. So it's our adherence to the Mishnah, the Chumash, the 10 Commandments, and God that preserves us. Now, Moshe Sternbuch offers a profound suggestion that it is the persecution that we've suffered that's kept us going. If everyone loved us, we'd have assimilated long ago. An interesting question is, why do we raise our cups of wine when we recite V'hisha Amda? Well, the reason is because it alludes to our victory over the nations, in that despite all their efforts, we continue to survive. And it's appropriate to raise a cup of wine, drink a toast, if you like, when we speak of victory. Here is the famous version, beautiful version, sung by Shweki as performed at a concert.
Song for my dear friend Yonatan Rosen. והיא שעמדה לאבותינו, והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו, שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלתנו, ועמד עלינו לחלצינו. והיא שעמדה לאבותינו, והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו, שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלתנו, הוא עומד עלינו לכלתנו. והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מידם. והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מידם. והיא שעמדה לאבותינו, והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו, שלא יחלך בלבד עובר עלינו לכלותנו, הוא עומד עלינו לכלותנו. והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו מידם. והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו מידם. שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, הקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו מידו. איזה קהל יש לנו בקיסריה, והקודש ברוך הוא מצילנו, 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 מצילנו מיודו. והקודש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מיודו. והקודש מצילנו מידי ידם. זה בטוח, הקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו מידם. La da da da, do do do, do do do. Yeah. La da da. מחיאות כפיים לילדים. What a crowd. Thank you so much.
Now come to the telling of the story of our people up to and beyond the action Exodus, the Haggadah. And we're going to listen to the inimitable Moshe Oisha. Now, you may be surprised to know, if you don't already, that Moshe Oisha was his real name. He was born in Lipkon in Bessarabia in 1907. Although there were Chazanim in his family, reputedly going back for 6 generations, he seems to have been more drawn to the stage for following in his predecessor's footsteps. And it's said that whenever traveling players visited his synagogue, much to the disapproval of his father, he tried to get a part in their production as a child player. In 1921, he was taken to Canada and joined a traveling Yiddish theatrical company, with whom he appeared on stage, on the Yiddish stage in New York. In 1932, he then led his own company in South America. In 1934, after he returned from a trip to Buenos Aires, he was unable to get a part in the New York shows, since they'd all been cast already. Well, he needed work. With the encouragement of his friends, since it was coming up to the high holy day season, he applied to conduct services at the Romanian synagogue. He got the job there, and he literally was a sensation. Well, Moshe now had 2 careers running. He starred in Yiddish films like The Cantor Sung, Yankel the Blacksmith, and De Vilna Balabasel. It was not long before he became something of a kosher heartthrob. He also made numerous recordings, and he continued to sing at the Amud. Although he received many offers to appear on Broadway, Moshe always refused because he would not desecrate Shabbat. His extensive acting experience clearly gave him a considerable advantage on the Amud. Listening to his recordings, one can hear the great artistry in his superb, rich voice. He was a chazan who knew how to manipulate the emotions of his congregation or audience, and he was a great showman. Moshe Oisha's style of chazanut truly reflects the old-time chazan. He was a zoga. He prayed every word with great emotion and fervency, and his Hasidic background is clearly discernible in many of his renderings. I think his style would probably not be acceptable in shul today, but it's wonderful to listen to his recordings, to hear pure chazanut, as our grandparents would have done. Here he is, singing Vanitzak.
Vanitzak el Hashem eliki avosino, kemo sinema, 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 sinema. ביום מורד יואים ביום אס מלך מצרים ביום בני ישראל מן עבודו ויזעקו בתר שבוס המלו אלוקים מן עבודו וישמע שמש פלינו כמו סנמה זו פרישת דרך ארץ כמו שנאמר ויור אלוקים בני ישראל ואלוקים ויצאו אלינו אלו הבנים כמו שנאמר בינה ילוד הירו תשליחו כל הבינה ילוד הירו תשליחו בכל אבס תחיין ויסלחתנו זו הדחת כמו שנאמר
Well, as the Torah relates, it was the last of the 10 plagues, the killing of the firstborn, that made Pharaoh finally relent and allow the Israelites to leave Egypt. God could have made him give way sooner, but he wanted the Egyptians to mend their ways, so he gave them time to consider after each plague was over. One explanation of how God brought the plagues on the Egyptians is that he used the same strategy as a general would when attacking a city. Blood, destroy the water supply. Frogs, sound trumpets to panic the enemy. Stinging lice, send in the archers. Wild beasts, all out attack. Cattle plague, poison the livestock. Boils, bombard with cannon. Hail, send in the heavy artillery. Locusts, kill everything in sight. Darkness, take captives. Makat Bechorot, kill the leaders. Here is Gadi Elon.
אלו עשר מכות, אלו עשר מכות, אלו עשר מכות, אלו עשר מכות, שהביא הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהביא הקדוש ברוך הוא, על המצרים במצרים, ואלו הם דם צפרדע, קינים, הרוב, דבר, שכין, ברד, הרבה, חושך, מכת בכורות,
Striking in the first report.
As I mentioned earlier, there were 15 steps leading up to the temple, and on festival days the Levites would stand on each step and sing a different psalm. These are the psalms, the 15 psalms that we have in our Seder as well. We say on Shabbat afternoon during the course of the winter. And they're 15 psalms that are headed Shir HaMa'alot, a song of ascents. That's because the Levites went up on the steps. Now in Dayenu, there were 15 times when we say, if God had only done this much for us, Dayenu, it would have been sufficient. There are lots and lots of questions about Dayenu. Let me just speak about one. We say, if he had brought us to Mount Sinai, not given us the temple, sorry, not given us the Torah, Dayenu would have been enough. Well, that does seem a rather strange thing to say. If we hadn't been given the Torah, what would have been the point of taking us out of Egypt? Just one answer is that the expression that God brought us to Mount Sinai includes giving us the Torah. When we say, but had he not given us the Torah, this refers to the old law. What this stanza is saying is, had he brought us to Mount Sinai and given us only the written law, not the oral law, this would have been sufficient. We're going to hear here a wonderful version that I downloaded from YouTube, sung by the Maccabees. Now, there's 9 different styles. I don't think I understand some of them, but I'll tell you what they are. They're straight, doo-wop, polka, funk, metal, island, dubstep, barbershop, finale.
Ilu ilu hotzianu hotzianu mi Mitzrayim hotzianu mi Mitzrayim dayenu 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 Ilu ilu koralanu etayam dayenu dayenu Natalanu, Natalanu, Echatora, Natalanu, Echatora, Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Ilu ilu ichnisanu li eretz Yisrael, 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 Dayenu, 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 Dayenu,
Aviva, it's time to open the door for Eliyahu.
And
There's a beautiful idea that every Jewish soul that ever existed stood at Mount Sinai to receive the Torah. That we were all at Sinai means that the spiritual essence of every one of us was a member of the throngs of Israelites who was enslaved in Egypt and then left with Moses. The Haggadah reminds us that because of this, we must consider it as if we lived through the traumas and triumphs of leaving Egypt individually. Here's Chazan Martin Levinson singing B'chol Dor Vador.
בכל דור ודור חייב אדם לראות את עצמו כאילו הוא יצא ממצרים. בכל דור ודור חייב אדם לראות את עצמו כאילו הוא יצא ממצרים. בכל דור ודור חייב אדם לראות את עצמו כאילו הוא יצא ממצרים. בכל דור ודור חייב אדם לראות את עצמו כאילו הוא יצא ממצרים. כאילו הוא יצא ממצרים.
After we've eaten and benched, the first thing we do is to pour out the fourth cup of wine and open the door to invite in the prophet Elijah. But the words that we say are really unexpected, and in many ways, I think are not very Jewish. We ask God to pour out his anger on those who've refused to recognize him and have oppressed us over the centuries. There are very few prayers in our liturgy when we ask God to punish our enemies. So what's going on here? As I mentioned earlier on, It was thought that the right place to open the door at the Seder was at the beginning. If you're going to invite people in, there's little point in doing so with the door closed. However, in earlier days, in some places it became positively dangerous to open your door wide after dark. There could very well be good-for-nothings waiting to run in to attack you and your family. Therefore, it became the custom not to open the door at the right place in the service at the beginning, but to wait until much later when these criminals would have given up and gone away. So when we open the door now, we ask God to vent his anger on those who prevented us from opening the door earlier on when we should have done. How and why Elijah came into the picture, we'll have to wait for another time. Here we have Oshi Tungenhaft, who was the chazan in Sydenham Shul in South Africa for many years, singing Shifo Chamatcha.
אל הגויים אשר לא ידעוך ועל ממלכות אשר בשמך לא קראו
Well, as you know, we say Hallel at the Seder, and we divide it in two. 2 paragraphs are said before the meal, and the rest of Hallel is after the meal. The reason for this split is because the first 2 chapters relate to the Exodus, so they're recited in conjunction with the telling of the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, whereas the rest of Hallel anticipates the coming of the Mashiach and is more in the nature of praises, which aligns them more with the character of this part of the Seder service. We're going to hear one of my favorite chazanim here, Moshe Taubeh, who only died last year. He's going to sing one of the paragraphs from the part of Hallel that we say after the meal. Moshe Taubeh was born in Krakow in Poland. He lost most of his family during the Holocaust, and he was a real-life beneficiary of Schindler's List. He and his father were eventually able to immigrate to Palestine. He studied at the Institute of Music in Haifa and the Jerusalem Conservatory, and he had much success as a concert performer in Israel, while also serving as the chazan of the Bograshov Synagogue in Tel Aviv. He went to the United States in 1957 and officiated at the congregation of Shaarei Tzedek in New York City until 1965, when he took up a position at the congregation Bet Shalom in Pittsburgh. And he taught for many years. He died, as I said, just last year. And here he is singing one of his own compositions, Ahavti.
תשמע דושן את קולי תחנוני כי תאזנו לי
There are two parts of our prayers that our rabbis call by the name Hallel. One is the group of Psalms, which we've just heard part of, Psalms 113 to 118, and they're properly called Hallel Mitzrayim. The other is Psalm 136, in which every verse concludes with the words, Kil Olam Chasto, his kindness is everlasting. And that the rabbis call Hallel HaGadol, the great Hallel. And as you know, we recite them both at the Seder. Once again, here's Moshe Oisha to sing the Hallel HaGadol.
All thy works shall praise thee, O Lord. Let us give thanks to the Lord, for his mercy endureth forever. amidst this burst of spiritual ecstasy, the last of the 4 cups of wine is consumed to its very dregs.
Well, we've now concluded all the ritual parts of the Seder and declare that we have conducted the proceedings exactly according to the halacha. The words of Chasal Siddur Pesach are taken from the end of a piyut, a liturgical poem that Rabbi Yosef Tov Alem, who lived in the 17th century, composed for Shachrit on Shabbat HaGadol, which briefly reviews the halachot of Pesach. In that piyut, the expression, the order of the Seder of Pesach is completed, refers to the laws of the Seder.
Chasal Siddur Pesach ki hilchasai ki chomish patoi v'chukasai kasher zachinu l'sader oisai ken nizke l'asai
From here onwards, none of the things that we say now form actually part of the Seder itself. They're simply Zmirot. We're going to hear Vahi B'chatzi Halayla. This is a piyut that was composed by the poet Yanai in the 7th century for use also at Shachrit on Shabbat Agadol. And it addresses the question of how come many of the miracles that God performed for us happened at night. You might have expected that dawn, the break of the new day, or in the full glare of sunlight would be more appropriate time for God to reveal his powers. The point is that midnight is a particularly suitable time for God to demonstrate his might, because the depth of the night represents the darkest, most difficult of times. And it's precisely at those times that we need God's help the most. And it's often been forthcoming. We're going to Cantor Shlomo Mandel sing the last verse of Vahi B'chatzi Halayla. It was at midnight. Shlomo Mandel was born in Poland in 1909, and it said at the age of 14 he composed his first Chazonische composition. In 1933 he was appointed cantor at the Moriah Synagogue in Warsaw. In 1938 he accepted a call to become the cantor of the prestigious Berea Hebrew congregation in Johannesburg, South Africa, a position he occupied until his retirement in 1974 when he went on Aliyah, and he died in 1981. Here he is with his own composition, Karev Yom. The song Kilo Na'er, Kilo Ya'er, to him praise is due, to him praise is fitting, is first found in Haggadah in the 13th century. We don't know who the composer was. I don't know if you've noticed, but neither this song nor those that follow have any specific connection with Pesach. This is sung by the famous Moshe Kozovitsky, to whom many entire programs could easily be dedicated. And very briefly, Moshe was born on the 9th of June 1899 at Smargon in Vilna, Lithuania. He came from a background of Chazanut. Moshe was the oldest of the four brothers, Jacob, Simcha, and David. They all went on to become famous Chazanim in their own right. Moshe began his career at the age of 8 as an alto in the choir of Chazan Shlepak. His first appointment was Chazan in the Vilna Savel Shul. In 1927, he auditioned for the plum position in Poland at the Slomacka Shul in Warsaw, where against the finest opposition, he was awarded a post. Being in such an illustrious job, his fame spread around Europe very rapidly. And soon he was traveling to Brussels, Antwerp, Vienna, and London to give concerts. During the Second World War, Moshe took his family to Russia, and he adopted the name Mikhail Kozovitsky. While he was there, he sang in the operas Boris Godunov and Tosca and Rigoletto. Moshe continued to travel and concertize all over the world. And there might just be someone watching this program who will recall his appearance at the Royal Albert Hall, London on the 13th of March, 1955. Can you imagine having a Chazanut concert in the Royal Albert Hall today? Wouldn't even fill the first 10 rows. Anyway, here's Moshe Kozovitsky with Kilo Na'eh. Adihu is first found in Haggadot of the 14th century. And again, we don't know who wrote the words. The tune that we all know so well, and in the Ashkenazi tradition has become the theme tune of Pesach, first appeared in printed form in 1644 in Haggadah. It went through much modification before it reached the form in which we sing it today. Now, we're not going to hear that one. We're going to listen to a version written by Shlomo Carlebach. Shlomo Carlebach was born on January the 14th, 1925 in Berlin, where his father, Rabbi Hartwig Naftali Carlebach, was an Orthodox rabbi. At various times, Shlomo lived in Manhattan, San Francisco, Toronto, Modi'in. In a career that spanned over 30 years, he recorded more than 25 albums. He died suddenly of a heart attack on October 22nd, 1994, while traveling on an airplane to Canada. Seated next to him was the Skvera Rebbe, and it said they were singing the Rebbe's favorite melody, which Shlomo had composed. Well, this is Shlomo Carlebach's version of Adihu.
Adihu, adihu, adihu.
Many cultures have counting songs, and the ideas contained in them have often been borrowed one from another. Cecil Roth in his Haggadah tells us that in medieval Germany, there was a peasant drinking song of this type that was adapted by monks for religious purposes. When these songs were adapted for use in the church, they stopped at 12, since 13 was considered by them to be an unlucky number. Echad Miyodea, which we first find in the 16th century, goes on to 13. First, 13 was of no significance to Jews whatsoever. And second, 13 has a mystical value, because the numerical value of the word Echad, that's Aleph Chet Daled, adds up to 13. So they saw this word as symbolizing uniqueness of God. Also, Echad Miyodea was obviously written for children, so it could have been thought of as a kind of catechism to help them learn these significant numbers. Here's the popular Israeli performer Yehoram Gaon singing it to a Ladino melody.
Piense y entendiense, alabar al Dios criense, cuál es el uno, cuál es el uno. Uno es el criador, uno es el criador, uno es el criador, Baruch Shemo. En su piense y entendiense, alabar al Dios criense, cuáles son los dos, cuáles son los dos. Dos Moshe y Aarón, uno es el criador, uno es el criador, Baruch Shemo. En su piense y entendiense, alabar al Dios criense, ¿cuáles son los tres? ¿Cuáles son los tres? Tres nuestros padres son, dos Moshe y Aarón, uno es el criador, uno es el criador, Baruch Shemo. En su piense y entendiense, alabar al Dios criense, ¿cuáles son los cuatro? ¿Cuáles son los cuatro? Cuatro madres de Israel, tres nuestros padres son, dos Moshe y Aarón, uno es el criador, uno es el criador, Baruch Shemo. En su piense y entendiense, alabar al Dios criense, ¿cuáles son los cinco? ¿Cuáles son los cinco? 5 libros de la ley, 4 madres de Israel, 3 nuestros padres son, 2 Moshe y Aarón, uno es el criador, uno es el criador, Baruch Shemo. En su piense y entendiense, alabar al Dios criense, ¿cuáles son los 6? ¿Cuáles son los 6 días de la semana? 5 libros de la ley, 4 madres de Israel, 3 nuestros padres son, 2 de Moshe y Aarón, uno es el criador, uno es el criador, Baruch Shemo. Piense y entendiense, alabar al Dios criense, ¿cuáles son los 7? ¿Cuáles son los 7 días con el Shabbat, 6 días de la semana, 5 libros de la ley, 4 madres de Israel, 3 nuestros padres son, 2 Moshe y Aarón, uno es el criador, uno es el criador, Baruch Shemo.
Also, we come to the end, but just before we finish, I want to express my thanks to Tony Honigberg for doing all the technical stuff this evening, doing it so well. Thank you very much, Tony. Well, Chad Gadya is another children's song. The suggestion is that these songs were kept for the end in order to keep the children awake. Many profound commentaries have been written about this poem, but it is in essence a nursery rhyme, similar in character to the English song, This is the House That Jack Built. It's written in Aramaic, which suggests it's a very old song indeed. Its purpose is to demonstrate how every being is responsible for their actions. There's always some power greater than itself, and above all is the Holy One, blessed be he. We conclude with Moshe Oisha once again singing his amazing version, which I can promise you, if you haven't heard it before, you'll need to hold your hats on. Enjoy.
Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya. Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya. Desiring Abba. Desiring Abba. Desiring Abba. They love them, Papa, the mighty Vidiram. Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya. But it paid the little Zab, and Abba, they love them, Papa, the mighty Vidiram. Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya. Yes, schön Robi, ich gadjo, die Zabin abo, die Zabin abo, die Zabin abo, bis sie love them, Papa, die Meir mit ihrem, hat gadjo, but it paid the little Zabin abo, bis sie love them, Papa, die Meir mit ihrem, Yes, my, you be in road, the Sura Blekro, the Kalvo, the Kalbu, the Shim, the Upper the Gadia, the Upper the Gadia. Niet zo snel maar de goede noorden de zorg ik doe de hele halve de zullen schillen de af de gadje de af de gadje شوخت لي ملخ موبي ديشو ما بشوخت ديشو ما بطيرو ديشو سلمايو دخول الميرو ديشو سلمايو دخول الميرو دسورة بلخيط فضيك لخلط بدا نوشا مشنة دي يأخذ لقاتي دي يأخذ لقاتي
Well, I wish you all a very happy Kasher Pesach. I hope your Sedarim will be just as musical as the one you've heard this evening.
Well, I'd like to thank Rabbi Geoffrey Shisler for his very varied presentation this evening and for allowing us to hear a range of both cantorial and non-cantorial Seder music. I hope that this helps you to enjoy your own Seder in 4 nights' time. We'll load this session on YouTube and US TV should you wish to hear it again or share it with others. We have a full adult education program lined up for you after Pesach, and we shall be posting it on our website, www.edweu.com shortly. It commences on Tuesday, the 20th of April, when we have a live stream, a session live stream from America by best-selling author Julia Fox Garrison, a stroke survivor, entitled The Power Within, Overcoming Adversity with Attitude, Choice and Purpose. For those of you who appreciate our cantorial sessions, you may wish to note in your diary Tuesday the 22nd of June at 8 p.m. when I shall present a session on Wembley United Synagogue's cantorial tradition prior to that congregation downsizing to new premises, and Tuesday the 31st of August at 8 p.m. when Cantor Robert Brody will lead a session on my favorite Yummy Norem recordings. On behalf of Edgewell United, I wish everyone Chag Pesach Kasher V'Sameach and look forward to the time when we can physically return to shul for sessions like the one we have just experienced virtually today. Thank you very much for watching.